Now, I want to try to keep my homily brief because I know that Father Matt is usually very brief in his homilies. And I don't want you to start comparing me to him. But I have to say that that wonderful ceremony of the way the Gospels were presented for the proclamation today reminded me of my visit to Africa, especially Uganda, where in many ways the same procedure was followed, where the Gospels came from the community and a beautiful woman was with a nice headdress came forward and she placed that gospel book, as the whole community sang hallelujah, on a chair. And then 4 men took the chair, each of the legs, and carried that gospel book on the chair up to the deacon. And I turned to the bishop and I said, "Tell me, what does this symbol mean of this ceremony that you do with the gospel?" And he said, "This is how in Uganda we welcome an important guest." And that's what you did today. You welcomed the important guest of Jesus in our midst, the risen Lord. That was your faith today that you expressed. And that is why we are here. You know, the people who study the Bible tell me that the Gospels are a different kind of literature. Oh, it's true. We hear about the life of Jesus, and so we might think it's a biography. And we also hear about his travels, but the Gospels are not a travelogue of Jesus. Rather, they tell me, these scripture scholars, that the Gospels were written with the inspiration so that in telling the events of the life of Christ and the impact that he had on people, those who heard the proclamation of the gospel would have the very same experience. The gospel stories are like little time bombs, and they have an explosive power to make a difference in our lives, to make us have an encounter with Jesus so that something new happens in us. And so let's keep that in mind today as we hear this gospel text, this story. It begins with Mary Magdalene, who is grieving. Her life is dark as that morning that she goes out. But we're told that it's the first day of the week. It's a reminder of what we hear in the book of Genesis on the first day of creation. There was darkness, a void covering the earth, a web of death. And yet on that first day, God created something new. That is what Easter is for us. It's God giving us another chance, that we can take the past of our lives and put it behind us, and we can have a new beginning, a new start. Those sorrows in our hearts, those griefs, the mistakes we made, the things we're ashamed of, the hurts that have been imposed on us by others, belong to the past. It's a new day. We start over. We begin again. A couple of weeks ago, I was with the Holy Father, and I asked him to do a video because we always look for ways in which we can help prisoners at Cook County Jail and other places where they're incarcerated. I said, "I'd like you to give them a message of hope." And in his message, he simply said to them, "I want you always to remember there's always a new horizon. Believe that there's a new day waiting you, a new horizon." That's what Easter is. It's the new horizon where we can begin again. But there's something else that Mary experiences on this first day of the week when it's dark. There's no dead body when she goes to the tomb. The message is clear. In this new creation that God gives us, death does not have power over us. Just as the past is relative, so is death. Death is not an absolute. It's not the end of who we are. And so it's important for us to make sure that we really believe that we have eternity before us, so that we are going to be less likely to be stingy in our generosity to people because we think that we will lose something, or that we will be compassionate and forgiving because it will cost us something, or that we're going to be perfectionists to the point where we don't forgive the failings of others, or maybe even forgive ourselves. No, the trajectory of our life goes beyond this earthly existence. God has made us for eternity. There is no death in this new creation that God gives us. That's what we believe and proclaim today on this new day. But there's something else. Each time we come to the Eucharist, we help each other keep the flame of faith that on that candle that we were given at our baptism alive. Last evening at the Easter Vigil, there was that wonderful ceremony of passing the flame from one to another. Maybe some of you were here for that. But that's what we do week after week. We help each other keep the flame of faith alive for each other. And so it's important for us to make sure that we do that, because then we can go out into the world where there is so much darkness, there's so much suffering, and we can tell them that Christ has given us a new day, that there's another way forward for us whenever violence comes into our streets, that we don't have to have revenge and retribution when we're hurt, that we can bring light to the world, especially to our young people, because when they fail so often, they give up on themselves. They're afraid of failure. And we adults need to say, no, there's something more beyond. A number of years ago, I was talking to an elderly man who told me about something that happened when he was a teenager. He had two older brothers. They lived on a farm in Iowa. And in their teenage years, their father died from an accident on the farm. And the mother said, well, I think we have to sell the farm because we really can't run it by ourselves. And the son says, no, give us a try. Let us try to see if we can make a living out of this. And so that fall, they worked hard. They planted the winter wheat. And in the spring, the wheat came up. And they saw that they were going to have a great crop. They were going to be able to save the farm. Their hard work had made a difference. But one night, there was a storm. And hail came and trashed the entire field. All their hard work was for nothing. And they sat in the field weeping, feeling sorry for themselves, that life was over for them. The mother came out in the field and saw this scene. And all she said to the boys was, okay, boys, gather up those hailstones. We're going to make ice cream for the neighbors. What she did was to let them know that the failure that they experienced was not the end of their life, that there was something else that they could do for another, even in the moment of their loss. That's what the resurrection does for us. That's what Jesus did on the cross. When blood and water flowed from his side, he gave everything in a moment in which his life was being taken from him. That's the power of the resurrection, giving us the ability in a moment of great cost and loss in our lives that we can still go on, because we know death is not the end of the story. So today, as we come here, and we renew our baptismal promises, and we see this Paschal candle lit, remember that on the day of your baptism, you were given a candle and told, keep the flame of faith alive in your hearts. And remember that you're here today to support each other to keep that flame going. That's why we need to come here week after week. And then allow the grace of Christ to push you into the world and to make sure that you bring light in those places of darkness, poverty, violence, crime, suffering, illness, and proclaim that death will not have a victory because Christ is risen from the dead, and so are we.